Today, it's all about icy effects as I create a small diorama and have two epic heroes face off against their enemies. It's tabletop time. I'm Murray, and today we're going to be making a smallish diorama with an emphasis on very cool effects. Namely, I'm going to have two heroes facing back-to-back Marvel superhero style as they enlist their awesome powers of ice and cast them across their enemies. I'm going to experiment with a couple of techniques which will also hopefully allow you to make some really cool things at home. This video has been kindly sponsored by Hero Wars. We've got a mage and a physical character, and then we'll have some really cool, almost like video game-esque powers lancing out at their hidden enemies that are, just out of shot of diorama. Thinking some, the ice wall, the chung 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 ice wall as it erupts out as you press your W in Dota or League of Legends or whatever. That will be the mage. And then I'm thinking for the other one, he's so big, he's got that presence, that intimidation factor, and all the ice in front of him is just shattered. It's just cracked out in front of him, sending a shockwave. So I'm gonna have icy effects cracking in front of him, and also a ripple of cotton wool or something that will just make that sort of whoosh in front of him. I'm gonna go spray this so I have a nice icy foundation to start with. Let's go! All right, we're back already. And now we have our little icy display. I think that's actually pretty cool and will serve as a really nice foundation. I'm going to attach everything directly onto this base. The best way to go about this is that I'm just gonna dive straight into making some of the effects, and then as we go along, I'll incorporate them into the diorama. Let's start with an icy wall. Team building is essential in any game. As you can see here, I have my mage, my DPS, and my tank. Now, if you're into a bit of team building and composition in your games, then luckily today's sponsor is Hero Wars, a stylish RPG with an emphasis on collecting unique heroes, whether they be from standard fantasy worlds, robots, aliens, vampires, and even furries. With a wealth of interesting designs and backstories, it is sure to keep you coming back for more. So min-max your ultimate team for efficiency or thematic flavor and defeat huge bosses to claim your rewards. With new modes and events being introduced all the time, currently featuring 6 game modes including the story campaign and even a roguelike tower. So progress your game the way you want to as you face off against other players in the arena to really test your mettle and immerse yourself in the stylish visuals and gameplay that is simple to learn yet hard to master. The game boasts constant content updates, features, events, and freebies in which will allow you to unlock new modes and even more heroes. So there's absolutely no reason not to try Hero Wars now. Scan the QR code and you will receive 5 top heroes. One of them is a secret. 600 emeralds and 30,000 gold. So links are in the description. Check it out. It's free. See what you think. And thank you again to Hero Wars for sponsoring this video.
Play Hero Wars now.
All right. Insert art here. Okay, it is time to build our silicon mold for our crystals. Scissors. Other things. Let's go. Crayon time. These big chunky crayons are all well and good, but I don't want just these for the entire wall. I need a little bit of a gradation, and cutting these down is a little bit of a waste. So I've also gotten a bunch of smaller crayons, so I'm gonna intersperse them. So this should give a nicer feel of this sort of wall of ice, starting small and then lancing out as it sort of gets cast out in a line. Very much inspired by all your Dota games and such like that. So I think this is going to be really cool. And the added bonus of it looking really satisfying, cutting the crayons, is just the cherry on top, really. I'm glad it looks cool because I've got a lot of these to cut.
Warning. Some viewers may find the following extremely satisfying.
So I'm going to be making my crystalline powers out of crayons, simply because I'm going to be casting these in resin, and the combination of resin casts in silicon will take every imperfection of your master mold that you might have. So I need these cuts to be as clean as possible, and crayons cut with a knife is very clean indeed. I tried a couple of alternatives first, including glue sticks, but it was just a lot harder to cut and the finish wasn't as nice. These tests with the crayon are fantastic. I'm going to just start shaving down the entire lengths of these to see what I can get.
The forbidden chocolate. Don't eat this at home.
Ooh, that's nice. I'm gonna do that a few more times. Okay, that's all of the crayons cut, and now it's time to make the mold so we actually make the resin crystals. So, Let's go. My hands are very waxy now. Let's go.
The most straightforward way to finding out how much material I need to place down all the crayons is simply to place all the crayons down on a piece of foam core. This will help both with measurements and just visualizing what I need to do. What I'm doing here is cutting the foam core into a rough shape that I can use to box in all my crayons to make our mold. Now I'm going to make it just longer than the foam core base so it can sort of overlap and touch onto the next piece that is framing the wall. This will allow for minimal to no gaps in my box, as leak in box is bad. Then all I simply do is decide how tall I want the boxes to be, and with the aid of a hot glue gun, we can see that the trained gorilla has mastered the art of box building. Just to make super sure, because we've had bad experiences with pouring resin, I'm going to make this very airtight. Now for the final step, all I need to do is find someone who is overly enthusiastic about making molds and pouring resin.
Okay, I've never done this before, but it seems like a really wise thing to do because I always over-mix silicon. You can pre-measure with rice.
Ah.
Volumetrically the same.
I was wondering why you had that.
Well, you know, and we'll have a little fried rice later. All right.
I see you've learned from your resin pouring.
Hi everyone. Everyone pointed out in the last video we were together, like, oh my God, Jazz is here. I reserve the right to come join in the fun from time to time. In this case in particular, I think I've done the most silicon pours in the studio, and this is Murray's first time. So I thought it'd be a good chance to show you the ropes so you can do as many as you want in future.
Yeah, I had a crash course. I looked at all our videos, so I know what not to do. But...
Awesome. Yeah, great. And, sorry, I don't want to rub salt in a very recent wound. I think I statistically have the most success when it comes to resin pours. Oh,
it's true.
It hurts so much. I'm excited to see how these turn out because the crayons have like a really sharp, flat, shiny surface, and the silicon always carries over the surface properties of whatever you cast from.
Ready, steady, mess up your
silicon! Ready, steady, regret. This is where we need to be.
You see, I would not have thought to do this.
It's pretty useful. We should keep rice in the warehouse. Let's stop with the rice.
It's Friday afternoon.
No more Mr. Rush guy.
Rush guy.
I'm sorry. So we want a flat edge, the flattest you can muster, and the flattest, widest.
The audience is appreciating this, how exciting this is right now.
It's very, very tense. Can we just add like epic action music to this? Do you want to do the honors?
Yes.
Every time. It's an equal mix. Part A, part B. It turns out looking ridiculously yummy, I'm not gonna lie.
You want to fold it first?
Scoop up from under. Definitely forbidden.
Forbidden flurry.
Yeah. Keep it going.
And for anyone's wondering, the outside of this container is dirty. The inside has been washed and scrubbed.
What I'll get you to do is you sort of want to hold the stick down there and pour a thin stream onto the stick. Then you can
Arrest its momentum.
Yeah, that's it. Because you just want it to fold around the crayons, but you can see how they're still moving even with that. So you just gotta be really gentle. Try avoid going on and try and go between, because then it can more likely fill cavities. Nicely done.
Excellent.
Take a seat because we are going to cut to 15 minutes from now. Yeah! Look at that.
We're back.
Editing magic.
In
now,
allotted time.
well, you get to do the fun bit of revealing our...
Hell yeah.
Come on, it's your birthday. It's Christmas morning. Go on, Murray. Go for it. Yeah, there we go, bloody yeah! Ooh, Murray.
Oh.
Oh, boy. Give ourselves a smooth surface.
Focus your butt.
Focus your butt. Focus your butt, mate.
No, you.
And make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more
quality content.
Now, let's put some resin in there.
Okay, so now that we've cleaned up anything that might have been spilled or whatever, I get to clean up these. So I'm just gonna gently run the knife over the edges where there's like basically a flash mold, as we would be used to with any Warhammer kit. Some of these might be questionable with whether we can use them. Like that one's got a bigger cavity in it, but I think that's totally usable. But some, like our resin crayon, yeah, those ones might have to sit this one out. So I'm going to trim my way through all these, make them look nice, and then we will set up our wall. All right, I have my tray of icy goodness, and the way I'm going to fix these to the base is going to be with UV resin. Now, not only going to attach the giant spike wall using this, but also all of the ice as well. I'm going to put a whole layer of UV resin down on the base. I'm going to attach the ice sheets down as well. It'll give a nice gloss and luster to the entire diorama. I'm thinking I'm going to use snow effects for the final touch and some maybe alcoholic inks to tint some of the ice as well as the final touch. Let's see how it goes.
Now that I'm ready to start building the wall of ice, I'm going to attach these straight onto the board using UV resin, as this will adhere really quickly, but also make an absolutely seamless blend since what I'm attaching is resin itself. It's going to bind and adhere in a completely seamless fashion. Now, unfortunately, there's no real university acknowledged compendium on how to create an icy attack wall. So I'm just sort of going by feel here. I'm going to start aligning the pillars more towards the leading side of the attack, where the pillars will be strongest and most jutting out of the ground. Then it's simply a matter of building onto that first pillar, going a little bit forwards to establish the angles that I want, then going backwards in a gradient, getting ever slowly smaller and smaller as I go back into the ground where the power originally originated from. Then I'm just going to add a final bit of resin all around the pillars just to blend them into the ground, and so I have no floating areas. This looks seriously awesome, and I'm so happy that I decided to create this. There's some imperfections here, a couple of bubbles that were caught in the resin, and some flakes of crayon, which I think hopefully add to the mood, but next time I would definitely try and get rid of as much of that as possible.
All right, so I've just finished doing all the crystals. I think it's looking really cool. I'm really happy with it. There are, of course, things I could do better next time, but it's a learning process. However, with that in place, we can see the rest of the composition a lot more clearly. Figures will be here, and we'll have the cracked ice going along here. Even though it's sort of an icy plane, it just looks a little bit flat, and we want to rectify that. I'm going to get some sculpt mold, which will, in its uncolored state, will look a bit like snow, so that'll help things. I'm going to raise it up in a little hill, and we'll have it overhanging like we've had some torrential glacial winds just blasting in through, so it's got some stalactites, a bit of movement to it, but we'll give a nice raised area for our characters to be held aloft upon, and it'll just make the whole diorama look really interesting and dynamic from multiple directions. And then we can finish with the cracked ice, even some more rocks, a few tufts, maybe a tree or two. That will be really cool. And then I think we'll find that the composition will look a lot more full and alive. This has been drying overnight and is now nice and hard, and I am actually really happy that I took Jazz's advice. I think this is a lot more interesting, a lot more dynamic, and we'll get a nicer result in the camera angles as we take reveals from a lower angle. Let's finally get on to doing some cracked ice. Ice, ice, baby.
Creating cracked ice is always a really cool effect, and there's a lot of products you can buy to create this, like actually ready-made resin ice kits. We even have some at the studio, but I wanted to try something just a bit more homemade. So what I've gotten is just some see-through plastic sheet. The stuff is basically just plasticard, but see-through, and we just had some lying around, so I'm gonna try using that. Now, why would I use this? I've seen that when you cut these, the scissors will leave this really rough edge, which sort of gets a bit opaque, which looks really cool as the edge of ice, as it's sort of sheared apart from the rest of it. This makes a really cool spectacle of ice that's just broken up out of the ground. And then, once I've got these, I'm gonna sequentially go through all of these pieces, taking more and more off them as I go along, making sure that the most pieces are towards the center of impact. Now, once I'm happy with how that looks, it's time to start putting more UV resin down on the base. Once again, I'm going to use this as the binding agent. I'm going to put a really thin coat, spreading it out with a throwaway paintbrush, and just lightly lay the pieces down. The bits of plastic are going to softly sink into the UV resin, getting rid of air bubbles, hopefully, and also giving that really nice glossy finish that's on the other side of my diorama. I'm going to start by just applying small amounts of resin so things don't get too out of hand, but once the pieces start getting bigger and bigger, I'm going to... And there we have it. This is my first time trying this, but I'm pretty happy with this look. I think there's a couple of things I can improve on, just as I could with the ice wall, but this is a really cool way to find things out. I think it's important to also show where you go wrong or just your learning experience, even if it's on YouTube for, let's be honest, quite a lot of people to see.
Firstly, we have Morrigan, the powerful sorceress and princess
who has found the power to resurrect her fallen father, tragically taken from her, and now back once again to defend his beloved kingdom and family. Leading, of course, into Corvus himself, our fallen king, tragically taken and restored to vigor, if not life, as he defends his daughter and crushing the enemies that would do his daughter harm. Now, to create Morrigan and Corvus from Hero Wars, what I did is try and recreate the characters as closely as I could in Hero Forge, which gives me more or less a strong foundation, some specific bits of armor, clothing, hair, and then the rest I'll just have to finish up manually. However, I'm really happy with what I managed to get. Then as a final step, all I did was scale up the models to 75mm scale. Then all I did was resize the models in our slicing software up to 75mm scale. That will give a nice, beefy character that we can work on in a diorama. Now, since these models are so big and I plan to use green stuff on them, I need something to hold them by. I can't just put my hand all over the model and ruin my green stuff. I've had far too much practice doing that, and I have had enough, quite honestly. I need something to hold them by. I'm going to use chunks of polystyrene. So I'm going to start off by grabbing some of those and then drill holes into the feet of our characters. This will allow me to insert some very thin armature wire. There we have it. Now they're ready to start sculpting onto. Now, while Hero Forge is an excellent program and allows you to create a whole range of different creatures and characters from fantasy to sci-fi, it does lack some very niche items such as a skin-tight purple leotard with skeletal hands cupping the bosom. I'm sure they may introduce this in a future update, but for now that is just a little bit out of reach, so I'm going to make that by hand. But to test the waters and to get my mojo into swing, I'm going to start with doing the decorative armor guard on Morrigan's shoulders. These have decidedly Aladdin and Jafar feels to them, and I need to really get those tapered points and cut-ins. All these characters have had quite a surprising amount of detail and effort put into their design and backstories, so I would encourage anyone who likes character design just to check them out and see what you think. Now, since I've technically printed Morrigan in the Nud, I'm going to need to sculpt some clothes onto her to give that really cool outfit that she's sporting. Strips of green stuff around the hips will allow me to give the illusion that that's where the clothes end or start, and then I'm going to insert some just around the chest to make it look like there's fabric sitting there. When it comes to requiring more organic and soft structures in sculpting, I'm going to mix more of the yellow side of the green stuff into the mix to make it more malleable and a lot more soft. Now, there's always multiple ways to sculpt anything, and the way I'm going to be doing these skeletal hands is to effectively just make a hand as you would normally, and then I'm going to poke holes in the knuckle joints to create that disjointed look of bony hands. The hand bone's connected to the arm bone. The arm bone's connected to the side of the scary mage, apparently. Now, in Hero Forge, I'd managed to find a sort of necklace or choker that I was using to represent what Morrigan had around her neck. Sort of a big gold clasp or collar, and I decided to use what I'd already printed as a foundation and just touched it up with more green stuff. Now, the boots themselves are really cool and have this really nice trim on them, and I'm going to try and recreate this simply by pushing a shape onto the knees and cutting away at it and reforming it as I see. And reforming it as I go. Now, the hair I'd chosen for Morrigan had this really nice full-bodied volume as it cascades down one side of her face, which is very true to the character design. However, in Hero Forge, it's also missing sort of the other side of her hair. All the designs there are very symmetrical, which is good until it's not. So I'm just gonna recreate the other side of her hair using green stuff here. When it comes to recreating characters, it's really important to get really defining features specifically around the face right. And this little curl of hair just in front of her ear is something that I definitely needed to add, I feel. Now, Corvus is wielding this massive glaive or halberd with just a little bit of undeady flavor on it. I'm going to use this very convenient design that's already on Hero Forge. Really all I need to add is a huge skeletal maw to the backside of the blade, so how hard could that be? Converting your models or even 3D prints like this is something that I think is always really cool and lends a really unique air to anyone's character. And I'm just going to add some worms of green stuff here, get them roughly into shape, and since I want some really nice hard lines on the tops of these to sort of spear point them off, I'm actually going to let these dry and harden overnight. When I come back in the morning, I'm going to trim them with clippers and that'll get a really nice finish. Now, my first attempt at the crown, I wasn't really happy with. The brim was just too big and the points too small. So I decided to scrap the whole thing and just make a whole new one. And I'm a lot more happy with this. It looks a lot more impressive, and I think a lot more like what Corvus is wearing. As a final touch, Morrigan is usually depicted as floating, usually in this really big throne, which is super cool. However, I'm going to do my best to represent her flying and add a little bit of visual deception, which is really common in miniatures when representing something flying. What I'm going to do here is just sculpt some icy flames, which I'm sure just hurt the brain of someone. However, it's going to be really cool, and so I'll take no logic here. Now that that's fully cured, I'm going to add the final touches, namely drilling through the flames, attaching Morrigan onto her new flames of levitating. Then I'm going to add bird skulls to Corvus's shoulder pads, and a small matching crown to Morrigan's head. Now, when it came to priming these miniatures, I used a fairly simple way of just zenithaling some colours. I focused on blue and brown for Corvus, since they were his primary colours across his entire model, and for Morrigan it's a blue into a grey, which is the colour of her skin, which is also the most predominant on her, but I think it's also the most important to establish those tones for her. Now, even if I go over the colours I've already established on one of these models, say Corvus here with all his blues and purples, I'm just going to go over pretty much entirely everything just to get the rich colour that I want. However, all the spraying I did still serves a purpose. I'm using really thin layers, and the colours I've already established are going to shine through these thin layers and help colour what I already have here. This will help me reach more interesting hues, and also it'll help tie the model together at the end, as the underlying colours are across the entire model. I also really like leaving some of the purple visible when I'm doing stuff like the bone here. It gives a really cool, creepy feel to it, very suiting of an undead king. Now that I'm onto the home stretch, what I'm going to do is paint the rocks that are still resin. I had honestly almost forgotten them. They need to be painted. Then I'm going to go in with a mix of snow effects, basically PVA glue mixed with hobby snow, and I'm going to apply that all over the model, covering any imperfections and the edges of anything, and we can insert our characters, and, as the final touch, the cotton wool as the billowing wind flying away from Corvus as he stakes his dominance on this battlefield. A huge thank you to all our patrons. Without your continued support, I wouldn't be here learning how to make really cool icy battles. If you enjoy this content and would like to see more, you can join our happy family of hobbyists in the links in the description below. By doing this, you can also support us and join in on our Patreon Discord, where we share advice on the pieces that we're all working on. And why stop there? You can also join in on our monthly mini review, where we post what we've recently finished or even currently working on, and you can have it reviewed and critiqued by the cast here. There is a wealth of talent in our community, and it makes me really happy to see how far people have come along. So again, if you're interested in joining us, the links are in the description below.
And there we have it. I'm pretty chuffed with this. This was a lot of things that honestly that I didn't have a lot of experience with, but I think they turned out really, really well. That ice wall is super cool, and I want to use that a lot more often. I've added just bits of extra flair with the ice punching out sort of mid-explosion, and we've got some tufts of motion showing that it's just punched through the earth. We've got our huge shockwave going through the ice, shattering it and leaving a sort of waft of icy wind as it billows away from our heroes. So, I hope you enjoyed our little foray into this diorama, and a huge thank you to our sponsor for the day, Hero Wars. If you'd like to dive more into the realm of us playing with the hobby, please check out the rest of our videos and consider liking and subscribing for more content. But I have somewhere else to be now, as Dave has just gotten back from Japan, so I'm gonna go say hi to him. So look forward to seeing him in future videos.